Most microlearning fails not really because of bad content, but because organizations build it backwards. When you start with content instead of outcomes, you end up with a library of short videos or microlearning assets that nobody uses and nothing actually changes. In this episode of the Microlearning Lab, Robyn Defelice, author of Maximizing the Power of Microlearning, shares the framework that separates effective microlearning from the kind that just checks a box. We cover the difference between knowledge, skill, and performance-based microlearning, why each requires a completely different approach, and how outcomes, purpose, and potential form the foundation of any microlearning strategy worth building. If you're designing microlearning programs and want them to actually move the needle, this conversation's for you. Hey everybody, Erick Prospero here with the Microlearning Lab. Today we're talking to Robyn Defelice, the author of Maximizing the Power of Microlearning. We're going to be discussing why microlearning initiatives fail to deliver real business impact. Robyn, can you tell us a little more about yourself, what you do?
Sure, and thanks for having me on, Eric. I really appreciate it. For me, I'm a consultant in general, but I really focus on what I call learning systems strategies. So that's looking at anything from the total solutions that a learning function puts out to even their operational maturity. So I'm always thinking about the systems that are in place and trying to improve them so that we can do the business we need to do, which is to help performance be what it needs to be for an organization.
Perfect. I know the theme for today is why microlearning initiatives fail to deliver real business impact. So at a high level, could you walk us through your philosophy on that and maybe tie in how it relates to your book?
Sure, and I can actually kind of start from there. The genesis of the book came from I think the first book on microlearning came out about 2019. And so that's when I really started to get immersed. When you start to write about things, people start to contact you. And so when Microlearning Short and Sweet came out, I started to see a pattern in what was being asked of questions about microlearning. And so that's where the genesis of maximizing the power of microlearning comes from. It's because it's really about all the things that have been coming along as challenges or things being highlighted as success for microlearning and really illuminating what that means as a total system for somebody. And so when we ask, why do microlearning initiatives fail to deliver that business impact? It's not so much that the microlearning failed, it was the strategic foundation underneath all of it that never existed, which is always a general struggle for L&D functions. So I don't typically find a specific product somebody's taking that's broken. I'm finding that there's three things going on. Outcome, what's the specific measurable result we're after? The purpose, why microlearning is, the right thing to be using in this moment to get at our individuals. And then that potential, what's the realistic benefit that the organization can actually demonstrate? So that's this strategic triangle that I'm not typically seeing underneath microlearning initiatives, which is why we're not getting the business impact we want. So it's pretty much, do you have a microlearning strategy as if you had a learning strategy?
That makes sense. And one of the things I want to call out before we jump into anything else is I noticed the use of the term products, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why that nomenclature? Like, why do you reference learning as products? And just because it's something that I personally use myself, but typically in the form of actual products. But why do you phrase it this way?
Specifically with microlearning, in general, I call learning products or development products or training products. But specifically with microlearning, one of the things that came out of all of this exposure to different uses and applications of microlearning and talking to different organizations and industry is that at the table at any given time, whether you're an L&D professional, a stakeholder in the room, a leader, again, does not matter. The term microlearning is being used typically three different ways. It's typically being talked about as a concept. So I just talked about purpose and potential. So that's the concept. Conceptually, what am I thinking it's going to do for us? What will it achieve? And then some folks are talking about it like it's mobile, it's video, they're talking about a method. They're talking about delivery. And then all of a sudden somebody starts talking about the actual thing that would be in front of our participant. And that's the product. So I make those distinctions because it helps me to have a better conversation with the people in the room, because sometimes L&D functions don't even know that they're talking over one another because the designer is really focused on the tangible, the product. And your LMS administrator is going to be thinking about delivery. So they're going to talk about it more from a method standpoint. So you start to hear these nuances. And as a person that comes in to look at systems, I'm sitting here going, wow, you all walked out of the room thinking the same thing, but all three of you in the room talked about totally different things. And walking out of the room, what is the product even going to look like now? Because left on the table was lack of clarity around the concept, the purpose and potential, and lack of understanding if the organization can even do the delivery, the method, the way that you envision the product being delivered. So that sounds like a lot of word salad, but that's what goes on at the table with microlearning.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense too, because I know when the framing matters and how they see and they're planning on using it, because the way we reference microlearning can be very different depending on the context from what our actual goals are, what the client's goals are. And again, it's the good news is it's a trend that's sticking around, right? I've even looked this up on Google Trends, and we can pull up a chart. I'll have it added in post-production that people are consistently looking what is microlearning as a trend. And again, they're all doing it from a different perspective, need, or mindset. Right. Now, how often do you think organizations confuse microlearning as a content format versus a broader performance strategy?
How often? I would say quite often. Again, it comes back to, do you have a strategy in place first and foremost? And then on top of that, what's your microlearning strategy? And I think the confusion, this confusion is driving these failed initiatives. So I guess what I would say is people treat microlearning like it's a tool in the toolkit, and we'll grab this microlearning tool for this one experience. And it happens to be actually an approach. To me, microlearning is an approach to developing a person. So that's where that product idea comes to place. We're developing products to develop a person. And so that approach requires you to start with learning initiatives. Like I said, again, we're going back to that strategic triangle. But then here's the other things, and you and I were talking about mindset. Who is the audience? What behavior are we trying to achieve? And, what is that capability we're trying to develop? And then what type of system or workflow is the microlearning fitting into? And what type of system is being supporting that microlearning? So that's why microlearning gets confused as a content format, because first and foremost, people think about the tangible product. And so all this other stuff that needs to be thought about and considered, that performance strategy, gets stripped away. Mm-hmm. I'm going to take our compliance training. I'm going to convert all of that very boring page clicking stuff into microlearning pieces, because now I can just parse it out to you, and it's not going to change incident reporting, safety, right? Like all you've done is just made more for the L&D function to maintain. So that's what you did.
That makes sense. And I think they tend to lean into it as a user experience strategy.
Yeah,
right.
Very good way of putting it. Yes.
Very focused on user experience, not necessarily tied to learning and development, right? It's more of, hey, are your learners prefer this format? They're busy, and this product is going to satisfy that need. But that's as deep as the conversation goes, right?
Yeah.
And shorter is better, and it just depends on the type of quantity, the type of content, and of course the context. And I'm speaking as like what we hear in the industry, right? Shorter is better. Well, the answer is always, it just depends on what you're trying to do and the type of content and what you're trying to see changed. But why do you think organizations assume shorter content automatically leads to better outcomes? And what's wrong with this thinking?
Okay. I kind of start off here to say to people, like, most times microlearning becomes this thing about the impact of knowing versus without showing. Right? If you know something, you know it then and there. There's a snapshot and a time for it. Even a microlearning product can say, hey, Eric, you just took this, so you completed it. I know you completed it, and you passed it successfully. I know two things, but I don't know if it's going to show some type of business impact or a learning outcome, right? So again, and I think you said it, I think the fundamental problem is that we're treating microlearning as a deliverable when it's actually a developmental approach, and that requires a system around it. And I kind of hinted at that a little bit ago. Shorter typically feels like a solution to a problem that a person, like a company has. Let's say employees don't have time to leave their desk. So leaders think, oh, microlearning, and they hear fast. And you were just talking about this. So what they're underestimating is all the other pieces that go with that, right? So it's humans actually don't develop. Just because you gave it to them shorter doesn't mean it got into that person faster, especially if it's a behavior or a skill change. Like that doesn't really happen. So behavior change requires the same things that's always required, right? Clarity of the outcome, motivation of the individual to engage, confidence in the individual, perhaps built through practice or safe environments to do things, competence through actual experiential doing of things, gaining feedback in real time from maybe a supervisor, and reinforcement over time, especially because we don't want them to lose what we need them to use. And those are the real things. So shorter content does not always lead to learning outcomes, because again, if you're just saying, I can get it to you faster and you can just shove it in your busy day, we haven't thought about all of these super nerdy things that people want to disregard, like, the science of how a person creates a memory, holds a memory, retrieves a memory, right? Or a thing called cognitive overload. Like, if I just said, I have a busy day and you're shoving my professional development into 15 minutes thinking that will advance me somehow, you're sorely mistaken. It just doesn't work that way.
That makes sense. At the very least, I think the mindset is, well, we can get the completion rate that we want, right? Just because, but I know that doesn't necessarily translate to anything meaningful. But
right. It shows what they know, but but what they know doesn't show back in the job. That's the challenge, right?
I know I've been, at least on the development side, requested to one, of course, make a ton of microlearning. It's one of our niches. But then the challenge is when they want to keep the same level of competency or skill, but then just reduce the amount of content that's included, right? So we often have to have the conversation to say, look, we're going to have to change something, right? It's either change the approach, change what we're focused on, reduce the scope of competency for the actual learner, or expand the content. Because again, shorter is not always better, right? And
right.
And it also just depends on how you're using it. But right. With that being said, for most L&D teams, what capabilities do you think they're missing, right, to make microlearning effective as a strategy?
As a strategy, and this again is kind of microcosm to macrocosm, but if I'm looking at it this way, I think it depends on the type of microlearning you're trying to do. And that's why, and when I say the type of microlearning, there's 3 types that I identify: knowledge-based, skill-based, and performance-based. And so one of the challenges becomes you're over-promising and under-delivering. So many people think that microlearning is some type of fast track to performance improvement. And improvement doesn't mean something's wrong. Improvement could be just like a new hire being onboarded faster, right? That's a deficit of no knowledge to knowledge and skill in a job role. And the reason why I bring that up is because if you're over-promising for performance, but your L&D function has capacity, and your organization has systems and means to actually distribute knowledge-based microlearning, start there. So what I created is what's called the Microlearning Learning Readiness Framework, where there's 6 dimensions to the Microlearning Readiness Framework, MLR. But it's assessing you on how well you as an L&D function align to outcomes, understand purposes and potential, but also your evaluation strategies, like what systems you have in place, what kind of ways can you do evaluation if it's microlearning and we talk about maybe something that needs a coaching piece to it from a manager. Can that system be created to complement the microlearning? And space learning, one of the things that also is a challenge is we're typically putting all of our learning somewhere in a repository, an LMS, SharePoint, right? So space learning is asking for a system to parse information or give a library where I can pull information as I need it. And so those all take some thinking about you and your L&D function, and if you have capacity and capability. And sometimes with microlearning in particular, you begin to reach outside the borders of L&D, and you might be touching IT or marketing. Great example, one project, IT was needed because we were doing an email microlearning campaign, and we wanted click open and click through rates. It's not something IT had ever dealt with. They also didn't have the capacity to deal with it for us, and they didn't have anybody that they felt was skilled to give us the data we wanted. So that delayed our launch. Had we thought about that in the beginning, we would have never promised what we promised, right? So that framework, that's why I said the capabilities that the L&D team is missing depends on what you're trying to achieve. That framework gives you your current state. And if you want to be performance-based, now you can have a really informed conversation around with your stakeholder. Like, I'd love to give you X, but I can't because we would need agreements from these departments. We'd need some governance over here. We would, right? It gives you that opportunity to decide. But if I looked at anything, if you just set aside that framework, I'm going to tell you right now, capacity, not capability, is the biggest challenge set upon an L&D function with microlearning. And I say that, case in point, when I just talked about, oh, you want something in smaller format, let's chop up that compliance learning. At one conference, I talked with a lovely lady who works for a law firm that made her take over 7 hours worth of onboarding training that was video-based and cut it up into 70 plus videos. And they had to maintain not only the long form, 7 to 8 hours worth of video, they had to manage any updates and put them into the microlearning videos. That is how much more capacity of this was an all-in-one L&D. So when I say capacity, some of that sustainability maintenance hasn't been thought about from the L&D standpoint, or the organization asking the L&D person to do more in microlearning. Tinier pieces, more to manage.
That's brilliant. And I love the framework. And I just want to confirm the categorization or the taxonomy. So you have knowledge-based, skills-based, and performance-based, right?
Microlearning types, yes.
Perfect. And I love that approach because it allows you to set standards up front, right? Yeah. Especially when you have limited resources and this is your opportunity to negotiate, as opposed to saying, yeah, this is going to cover everything. And it's a hard conversation to have because you kind of have to admit that, look, we only have the resources, time, and budget to do something that's knowledge-based, maybe a little skill-based, right? If you really want something to move the needle, we're going to have to shift our thinking and shift the type of conversation we're having, because, but that's what everyone asks for, right? Because we, but I love the approach and the answer on the capabilities question, because I think that's everyone's issue in L&D, right? I've only met a few teams that are very well funded and well resourced. And every now and then you run across somebody, you're like, and they'll tell you, oh no, we're great. We have a team of designers, instructional designers. We have a budget, and those unicorns are living a good life. But for everyone else, are there any foreseeable solutions to the capacity issue? No, right? I mean, it's a tough conversation. I mean, I want to throw AI into the mix, but that's another capability piece, right? So people are still filling out AI for themselves, for the organization, how L&D's role fits to that. What kind of opportunities do they have to utilize it to their advantage to maybe shorten development timelines, or create content a little more quickly, which would then constitute the see we can design microlearning fast. It still does not throw out all the good things that you would do. Like, I wouldn't build a house without a blueprint. And a lot of the things we've been touching upon that are these, I'm air quoting, fail points to microlearning, are all about not having the blueprint. But that's an age-old problem for learning and development in general. They want to be part of the business and be business-minded. And that means having a strategy. But the organizations, time and time again, don't value L&D to be a business partner. They see them more as a service entity draining budget. And I'm in my head always constantly grappling with the thought that we develop the talent that does the performance. And if the performance is great,
you're benefiting as an organization in dollar and revenue, supposedly, right? So why would you not give capacity? Why would you not allow it to be the ultimate thing that aligns to strategy, that type of thing? I'm sorry if that's soapbox-ish, but that's where, and microlearning just sticks a microscope on that constantly.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's a broader conversation that has to happen as to what L&D can do different, because I think we have to take ownership of the deficiencies we have, right? What are we doing wrong that gets us seen as a cost center or service base, right? Why aren't our courses actually solving problems for the business? And then I had a conversation with a brilliant guy, and again, it's starting with shifting the value that we're bringing to the table, right? How do we? 'Cause I think when you start with actually solving a problem, then you build a little more credibility, you get a little more budget for the next conversation.
Yes, and so when you said about, I want to kind of go back and answer that capacity question and say that MLR framework are your starting point. So instead of always looking outside of L&D and saying, you are coming against me and not helping me be a business partner, the MLR framework is a great way to become a trusted advisor, because like you said earlier, I'm coming to the table and saying to you, I know my current state and what I can do for you. How do we negotiate? How do I influence, right? And so then when we go to the next piece, what's the difference maker? I would tell you right now, proving value before scaling. Sometimes people want microlearning at scale. And I say, take something you've got in place, complement it with a pilot, start small. Maybe look at your sales team. Can we use it? Can we use microlearning to do skill practice on objection handling or something like that? Does it move the needle? Can I get my sales, my new hires in sales out into the workforce selling faster because I've maybe done something different with microlearning and their onboarding that allows them to develop more skill in performance mode than sitting down and trying to just dump it all into them, give them a couple opportunities to practice and then see how they, you know what I mean? So prove that value before scaling. And I think those things are in control of the L&D function. And again, pair that back with the framework. If you know your capacity and you know the opportunities and constraints within your capacity, how can microlearning exist? And how can you pilot some opportunities to prove its value so you can scale? And if they want more, that's your opportunity to flex and negotiate for more, because you already know what it takes to do more. You've done the work. I can be successful here for you with skills and a little bit, all knowledge and a little skills. But if you want skills and performance, this is how we have to move the needle. I know I can do it for you, but I need these things.
Love it. It's a mindset of operating as an entrepreneur, right? How do you build your brand and credibility within your organization? Because it's easy to say, oh, everyone sees L&D as a service function, but hey, you have your own spheres of influence that you can control, right?
Yeah. I love that you said entrepreneur. I used to use that as one of my titles. I almost said I'm a learning entrepreneur because that's what I like doing, is going into organizations. And so I started calling myself a systems manager because I entrepreneurially think about everything that you're trying to do. And most people, I think, as leaders, if there's a leader that's sitting in L&D that didn't come from an instructional design background, maybe they came from sales or marketing, your L&D people are probably some of the most entrepreneurial people in your entire organization. It's just, to your point, Eric, the word is entrepreneurial because they're utilizing that mindset for the organization, trying to do better, trying to do more, because they want to see the mission, daily work of the organization. They want to be able to see it maximized through helping to provide great tools and, materials, products that support that performance being what it needs to be every day. So anyway, yeah. I think we could go on forever on this.
Yeah, for sure. No, and honestly, this has been a fun conversation. I'm excited about the book. I'm going to assign it to the team as well. I'm going to make sure we're competent because, again, we're on our side, we're the media specialists, right? It's what we're really good at. But I think there's layers in terms of what we could be doing ourselves on the consulting side, better serving the industry. With that being said, I wanted to ask, what's the best place to find your book or get a hold of you in terms of work or consulting or some of the initiatives that you're doing now?
Okay, so if I tick those off, for the book, you can do standard like Amazon. If you're an AT, one of the things I do ask is if you are an Association for Talent Development member, utilize your chapter when you purchase and go through the ATD website, because you can put in the chapter code and support your chapter locally. So I do try to encourage that. When it comes to finding me, I'm on LinkedIn almost every other day. I do Microlearning Mondays, so I encourage and invite people to find me on LinkedIn. And if you're just looking for something general to know about me, you can go to my website, which is radlearning.com, radlearning.com.
Perfect. Robyn, we'll put those links in the description. And again, I just want to say thank you so much for the time. This has been insightful. Hopefully we can get you on again in the future. And best of luck on the book.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Want to learn more about microlearning best practices? We've got you covered. Check out the video cards for more related content. Don't forget to subscribe for weekly tips and explore the description for a curated list of resources to continue your e-learning journey.